Something Borrowed, big number 10, all of the fingers, all of the poems, all of the love. This is the grand finale of this season, and we got some bangers to go out on. We got Toby Campion, I'm doing a song, we've got some poems, we've got some chat, we've got some good times. Listen to that hubbub of excitement. That is going to be in your heart and your mind forever. Thank you. Goodbye.
And welcome back to the second half of Something Borrowed. Did we enjoy the first half? Yes. Did we enjoy the interval? Yes. Did we promise to enjoy the second half? Yes. Fantastic news. My name is Harry Baker, and I love doing this. It is the thing that I look forward to every month. Thank you so many of you who have come time and time again. For those of you here for the first time, we are taking a little break after this, but we will be back better than ever. So please do come back with us, because it wouldn't be the same without you. I am going to kick off with something old, and then I'm going to bring on our special guests, and who will do something old as well, and then we'll have a bit of a chat and go through the rest of the allotted format of the show, as we have done every other time. And this something old is one of my oldest poems, but it is in honour of the general election that has just been called, and it reminded me that I wrote this poem about 14 years ago. And it's called Paper People, and it was the first time that I was able to vote, the first time I was sort of feeling politically engaged, and at the time the Tory government were in power, and there were lots of clampdowns on protests, and I'd just been to Palestine, and the situation there was heartbreaking, and the more I sort of went back through this poem, the more I realised there's quite a lot that has not changed. But another thing that has not changed is my belief in people who are out there fighting for what is right and what is good, and that belief is stronger than ever. So I want to do this poem as a reminder that some things don't change, but some things do, and we have to fight for them regardless. I like people. I'd like some paper people. They'd be purple paper people. Maybe pop-up purple paper people. Proper pop-up purple paper people. How do you prop up proper pop-up purple paper people? I hear you cry. Well, I'd probably prop up proper pop-up purple paper people with the proper pop-up purple people paper clip. But I pre-prepare appropriate adhesives as alternatives, a cheeky backup bridges in case the paper slipped, because I could body pop up Metropolis. But I wouldn't want to deal with all those paper people politics, paper politicians with their paper thin policies, broken promises without appropriate apologies. There'd be a little paper me and a little paper you. And we could watch paper TV and it would all be pay-per-view. We'd see those poppy paper rappers rap about the paper package, or watch paper people carriers get stuck in paper traffic on the A4 paper. There'd be a paper Princess Kate. We'd stare at paper Pippa. We'd all live in fear of Killer Jack, the paper ripper, but the paper propaganda propagates to people's prejudices, papers putting pictures of the photogenic terrorist that is a little paper me and a little paper you, and in a pop-up population, people's problems pop up too. There'd be that pompous paper parliament who remained out of touch, who ignored the people's protests about all those paper cuts, and then those peaceful paper protests would get blown to paper pieces by those confetti cannons manned by preemptive police, and yes, there'd still be paper money. So there'd still be paper greed. And those paper piggy bankers pocketing more than they need, purchasing the potpourri to pepper their paper properties. Others live in poverty and aren't acknowledged properly. A proper poor economy where so many are proper poor. But while those needs get ignored, the money goes to big wars. Origami armies unfold plans for paper planes, and we remain imprisoned by our own paper chains. And the greater shame is that it always seems to stay the same. What changes is who's in power, choosing how to lay the blame, they're naming names, forgetting these are names of people, because in the end it all comes down to people. I like people. Because even when the situation's dire, it is only ever people who are able to inspire, and on paper, it's hard to see how we all cope. But in the bottom of Pandora's box, there's still hope, and I still hope because I believe in people. People like my grandparents, who every single day since I was born have taken time out of their morning to pray for me. That is 8,396 days straight to someone checking I'm okay, and that's amazing. People like my aunt who puts on plays with prisoners. people who are capable of genuine forgiveness, people like the persecuted Palestinians who go out of their way to make your life better and expect nothing in return. You see, people have potential to be powerful. Just because the people in power tend to pretend to be victims to come to that system, and the paper population is no different. So there's a little paper me and a little paper you. And we could watch paper TV and it would all be pay-per-view, and in a pop-up population, people's problems pop up too. But even if the whole world fell apart, then we'd still make it through. Because we're people. Thank you so, so much. Could you please keep that warmth and energy and love going, and welcome to the stage the fantastic Toby Campion.
Harry's taller than me. Hiya, how you doing? Good. I love this format because I'm reading things that I've not read in years, or things that are brand new. And I was trying to find something old, and I was looking through poems, and I was like, did I write that? Did I believe that at the time? So I'm going to read this that I haven't read in ages. It's called Learning to Swallow. Maisie would serve us doubles and charge for singles after college. If her supervisor was in earshot, she'd ask for ID, and we'd hand over our Nando's loyalty cards. Vodka lemonades, cherry VKs. Each week, I felt less red about being the only boy in the group. We took turns choosing 3 tracks for £1 on the jukebox. Do you remember that? Yeah. Oh, waiting for the look on each other's faces when our songs dropped. TLC, Craig David, singing along like we were in concert. One week, the football was on. 2 brick house built men, the tattooed fists I knew too well, stood at the bar and stared at me. The girls didn't notice. The table caught fire. The glue holding up my forehead melted. All my teeth fell out and buried me, but the girls didn't notice. Next round, I ordered a pint of beer. Maisie laughed. I went red. She pulled me a half of cider, which barked when I grabbed its neck. I shouted at the screen to hide the noise. I couldn't look them in the eye when my next songs came on. Johnny Cash, or something else my dad might have played. The girls mocked the deep voices, mimed along. I didn't have the words. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
The last stage we shared together was at the Royal Albert Hall.
Yes. Just as good as this one.
And I did some maths, and to perform to the same amount of people. Good woo for maths there. Come on. I think I know who that was. To perform to the same amount of people, we would have to do this gig sort of 125 times. So my first question for you is, are you up for staying for another sort of 4 months and just kind of having a residency here?
Absolutely.
Fantastic news.
I love the sea.
And we were talking about this outside. It was such an amazing gig to be a part of. And we basically all got to do 10 minutes each in front of that many people. And I remember feeling really excited that you were on the lineup as well, because I think of all of the people there, I knew that you could be funny and lighthearted and also sort of devastating and brilliant, and trying to kind of find that balance. And I was trying to work out what to do in my set. And I just wanted to ask, how did you decide what poems to do in such a kind of specific gig?
Yeah. Well, also 10 minutes is a bit weird, isn't it, when you do gigs? Because if they say maybe, 5 minutes, you just do one poem. Or with 15 or 20, you can have a bit more time. But 10 minutes is a bit weird, isn't it? Because you have to kind of warm up the audience. I wanted to do something kind of that I knew to begin with, something old. Pretty much followed the format of this show. Something old to begin with that was kind of maybe a bit funnier. And then some pieces that I've been working on recently and that I'd been that I thought were kind of important to say on that stage. Yeah.
I thought you were brilliant. I thought you held it and made everyone laugh, and then sort of just said something. I thought it was really brave to talk about Palestine on that stage, and like you sort of got almost heckled during.
Oh my days! Oh no, I got fully heckled.
Which, and for me, I think that gig, it feels like a once in a lifetime thing. I don't know if it is. I don't know if they'll just get us back every night because we smashed it. But again, to sort of have that moment interrupted, because you kind of feel like there was such a reverence in the room, and so again to have that and to be heckled, and I thought you handled it well, but there was already so many nerves going on. So I think to have opened it up to that and to held that, I thought you did really well. But how was it in that moment?
Well, you were obviously also incredible, and I kind of thought I wondered if that might happen, because I think sometimes when you do poetry gigs, not to like generalize, but it's maybe a smaller audience, people who are in the room are maybe on the same page as you politically, but I thought in that space, there were 3,000 people, likelihood there were a lot of varying political views, and I kind of thought that's the point of being on that kind of stage and saying things like that. And I also thought it was great that Kay talked about things to do with being transgender, and because there were definitely few JKs in that audience, I'm sure. And also George the poet got heckled. He was talking about colonialism and racism, and someone heckled him, which is wild. But also I think it shows that audience was actually diverse in terms of opinion and experience and stuff. And not that it's a good thing that happened necessarily, but it's I think it was a...
Yeah, I've definitely been to nights where someone does a political poem and everyone in the room already agrees with them, and so there's lots of like finger clicking and feeling good about it. And again, I think to have those spaces and to share those views and to kind of inspire each other is such an important thing. But it feels like to bring it in a space where that's not automatically heard and accepted, I think was such a huge thing to do.
Yeah.
So I loved it. How has it been since? How's the come down?
Oh God, I was on a full on come down. I was for a week I was like, oh, it's hype, yeah, it was great. It was such a great night, and it just felt like a real celebration. And mostly the audience were really nice and receptive and loved it, I think. It has been a bit of a come down since that.
I did a gig in Ipswich last week in this pub, and there was a woman there who was also at the Royal Albert Hall gig, and she came in and she basically was saying, it feels like you've come quite far down from the Royal Albert Hall to be playing at a pub in Ipswich. But it was an absolutely joyful gig, partly because a woman came up to me afterwards and told me that the person behind them, their teeth had come out during the gig.
Oh, wow.
But like, this woman said it's because they were laughing.
I was going to say, was it laughter or
like in a good way.
Medical emergency.
And what I didn't fully say when I put this online earlier was, at the end of the gig, the teeth were just still there. Sort of like under this chair. So this, and like obviously I felt terrible for this person because like they must have noticed.
Imagine if they didn't.
Well, yeah, maybe it just happens a lot. They just sort of go through it, like it wasn't a full set, but there's like enough.
Just the bridges.
Yeah, and so I imagine that they were just like probably like mortified, and then like didn't want to like make a fuss. So thought, well, I'll just like come back later. But it meant that at the end of the gig, just like under one of the seats was just this like set of teeth.
Their dentures were just there.
And so then, and like the barman was really lovely. He like put them in a glass of water ready for them to like come and get them back. So apparently they're really expensive. But I just like, for the record, that is not something to be embarrassed about. That is
absolutely not.
The greatest thing that has ever happened to me.
Absolutely not. Do not be embarrassed if that happens to you, please.
And I loved, so like, didn't get that at the Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah, that's actually the best story I've heard from the night, to be honest.
So it's the only way is up.
Wow.
Are you up for me doing something new?
Absolutely.
I've been on tour in Ipswich and surrounding areas, and It's been quite a bit of music tonight, and this is a song that I wrote. And I think it is partly because I've got a few poems that I wrote a while ago that are quite specific. So I've got a poem about dinosaurs, and I've got a poem about falafel, and those two in particular have informed a lot of Christmas and birthday presents from friends, families, and other. And especially the falafel one, in it I asked the question, how much falafel is too much falafel? And my life since has been an exploration of that question because it's been a lot. And I'm grateful for it, and I still love those poems, and I will take any dinosaur-based gifts for the rest of time. But I thought maybe this time I could be sort of proactive, and if I wrote a poem about sort of my favourite drink, then people would just sort of like buy me drinks all of the time. And then I started to write it, and I realised that this drink, poetry is not enough to express my feelings. And as we've learned through the open mic, sometimes music is the only way to get to the heart of these things. So this is a song about my favourite drink, which is the wheat beer Schofferhöfer, specifically the grapefruit wheat beer blend. So regular wheat beer sort of 4-5%, but the grapefruit one is sort of 2.5%. So it's just a bit of a kind of summer lovely drink. I'm gonna go off mic stand. That's just how into it we're getting. Can you hear the track all right? I ain't in the club sipping on the Grey Goose. Find me in the sun drinking in the great view. And by view, I mean wheat beer and grapefruit. Scene one, action, cut, then I take two. Any other drink, I say nah like it's Hey Jude. Proofs in the palm of my hands like I'm Jesus. And if you don't stock it, then I hate you. Okay, that's a bit strong. Unlike 2.5% ABV, 100% THC. It helps get you from A to B. If A is all right and B is bloody brilliant. End of the day, it is light and it's juicy. Start of the day, it's still nice and it's fruity. All of the day, it's like I'm at the movies. I sit back and take in the view. See, I like a schuff. You like a schuff. We like a schuff. Drink it, cause it's nice. I bring the schuffer. You bring the hoofer. Put them to goofer. It's that Schofferhöfer live. Schofferhöfer. A Schofferhöfer. A Schofferhöfer. Yeah. When I'm facing the big Schoff, I take a deep breath like I'm Wim Hof. Soon as it touches my lips, we have liftoff. Sweeter than Biscoff, walks in like Christoph. Taking a sip is like Christmas come early. Grapefruit's in it, so I will not get scurvy. It's basically one of your 5 a day, and it makes me feel some type of way. Even the O with an umlaut looks like a face that is shocked at how good that it tastes. A life without shove could be a waste. It could not, but is that a risk that you take? It's a bottle of orangey pink, or can, like a sunset, but one you can drink. I honestly think it's a wonderful thing. It can top any list like it's Gone with the Wind, cause I like a schuff. You like a schuff. We like a schuff. Drink it, cause it's nice. I bring the schuffer. You bring the hoofer. Put them to goofer. It's that Schofferhöfer live. Schofferhöfer. A Schofferhöfer. A Schofferhöfer. A Schofferhöfer. All together now. A Schofferhöfer. A Schofferhöfer. Just you. Schofferhöfer. Yavo. Take it to the bridge. I can't get enough of Schofferhöfer. If I have a cough, then I'll quaff a Schofferhöfer. I could offer David Hasselhoff a Schofferhöfer, and I bet the Hoff would scoff a Schofferhöfer. Honestly, I love a Schofferhöfer. There is nothing I would put above a Schofferhöfer. In the words of philosopher Dietrich Bonhoeffer, we must allow ourselves to be interrupted by God. Drink it, cause it's nice. I bring the schuffer. You bring the hoofer. Put them to goofer. It's that Schofferhöfer live all together now. Schofferhöfer. 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 A Schofferhöfer. Put your imaginary Schofferhöfer in the air. Schofferhöfer. A Schofferhöfer. Schofferhöfer. Dankeschön. My tour show is 90 minutes of poems with that in the middle. And my sound check is just me doing that. And it's really fun. And like, I still don't know what to say afterwards. Or there were a couple of German women came to my show in York, and they came up to me afterwards and said, "Do you actually like Schofferhöfer?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's this like cool artisanal drink." And they explained to me that because it's like 2.5%, it's basically the equivalent of like WKD in Germany. And it's sort of only teenagers who drink it because they don't like the taste of beer yet. But that's the kind of spirit that I'm trying to channel.
Yeah. You really channeled it well. I didn't know whether I should join in, like, you know, on the X Factor, those guys singing Mysterious Girl. And the guy in the back's like, "Come on, move your body." But I thought I'd let you do your thing.
No. I feel like the stool is a good set for
Wow,
it as
yeah.
well. It's just sort of... always welcome.
Okay,
So
it's good to know that.
I'm obviously picturing at that point sort of the aliens will come out of people's chests,
Yes.
and then they'll sort of join in and we'll all start drinking
Yeah.
it. My related question to you,
Here comes the segue.
if you could sort of be sort of unofficially endorsed by any drink or other product, what
would it be?
Yeah.
Similarly, I used to drink this. I don't know if anybody is familiar with this drink. It's like a Spanish liqueur called 43.
Yes.
Do you know it?
Yeah.
It's
It's like honey.
It's like honey.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really,
yeah.
really sweet. It's like sickly sweet. And when we used to go to the Costa del Sol on family holiday, and I used to have, maybe when I was like 10, a cup of this with like loads of ice, and they'd just give me a straw and like send me off, and I'd sit in the corner and drink that. And then I started dating this guy who was from Barcelona, and we were like chatting quite early on, and I was like, yeah, you know, I drink, you know, I'm quite familiar with Spanish cuisine. I don't know if you've had 43, see? I drink that. And he had the exact same reaction as the German when he was like, "Why the fuck do you drink that?" He was like, "That nobody drinks that here. It's disgusting." But I still stand by it, and I'd like to be sponsored by them.
Yeah, come on record. But I think that's the thing, because I remember I was in like the States and they had Strongbow there in sort of like glass bottles, as if it was like a really kind of summery,
Suave.
light, suave, cidery kind of thing. So I think this just happens sort of away from home. It just has a different
I didn't
flavour.
realise in America that like cider isn't really a thing there. When you ask for a cider, it's like apple juice.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a fact. Just thought I'd throw that in. I've been to America, guys.
Are you up for doing something new?
After that, I don't think there's not a chance I can follow that. I don't have a backing track, but I will. I'll try. Yeah. Okay. This is like quite short, by the way, and super new. As in, I was like trying to finish it on the train here. But I set my mum up on a dating app. We were like doing her dating profile on, I think it was Bumble last year or the year before. Does anyone else have parents who are single? Yeah, one person. Okay. Well, this is for you, babe. Okay. But it's hard though, isn't it? Because you're trying to be encouraging, but you're also trying to warn them that everyone on the app is an absolute weirdo, and not to, you know, invest too much in it. But she suggested that we go on first dates together. You know, the TV program First Dates. She suggested that we do that together, which I was like, no, but I'll write a poem and pretend we did. So this is kind of like imagining that happened. It's called Double Date. Laughing at the terrible men we agreed to spend an evening with. Your date stole 30 minutes explaining the menopause. Mine spoke only in single accusatory words, into, pics, a com. You in the flowy pear sundress you've had since I was little. Fixing your mascara in the restaurant bathroom. Me sat next to you on the vanity, swigging from the hip flask we snuck in your bra. Fellow diners orb around us, complaining about their companions, exploiting the posh hand lotion. Someone orders a round of lemon martinis to the hand dryer, A calamari platter appears. At our tables, our dates check their titanium watches, sniff at their sweat patches. Us unlatching the sash window, flopping onto the dumpster in the alleyway one by one. A lineup of giddy burglars skipping backwards into the city.
Incredible. Thank you. In terms of something new, when I sort of asked you what we had coming up, you were doing a few sort of hosting gigs.
Yes,
How does that feel compared to doing a performance? Because I think for me, when I first started doing this, I basically saw the hosting as just like try and get to the poems as quickly as possible. But I think I've sort of learnt to love curating the night and the atmosphere. And what I love about this gig is getting to chat to people and kind of the fact that it is different from just a kind of standard poetry gig. But I also think everyone who comes to these is really lovely, so I don't have to do that much to make it nice because people bring such nice energy. So what is it like hosting in different spaces where you're kind of just thrown into it? How do you create that vibe, or are there certain things you do, or do you approach it like a poetry set? What's it like?
I really like hosting. I mean, not everyone is as lovely as this audience. You have to butter up the audience. That's tip number one. No, I really like hosting. I don't enjoy it more than reading poetry, but I think it's a different skill and it's a different vibe. And there's a bit more, or even more kind of like ad-libbing and just kind of like going along with it, engaging the room, which I really enjoy. And yeah, I think it really varies where you are. And the audience, it really varies. But I also really enjoy curating lineups. I'm not a producer at the Roundhouse. I don't have any say over that, but they just get me to do the hosting. But I direct Unislam, which is like a university poetry slam, and I love kind of curating the lineups and thinking who would complement each other, and I love all that side of it. Yeah, I really like hosting.
How many years have you done Unislam now?
Next year will be 10 years. Isn't that wild? You did Unislam years ago, didn't you?
Yeah, I was in Team Bristol.
Yeah, Team Bristol. That was the year I wasn't running it then.
Yeah.
When it was in
I could
Edinburgh.
tell.
Thanks. It's been 10 years next year. Wild.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And how many people take part now? Because it's like a full-on weekend.
Yeah.
Feels like a festival.
So it's basically like a poetry slam. So poetry slam, if you don't know, is a poetry competition basically. So it's the UK National University Poetry Slam poetry competition. So it's teams of students from unis across the UK that come together and take part. I mean, Poetry Slam has its ups and its downs. I run this festival. I'm not the biggest fan of Poetry Slam. I think it does really good things and also things that aren't so great, but it's a really great way to get people to come and watch poetry. And also, I think my work with the festival has really been kind of taking the competition element out of it and making it more about community and development and that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know how many people take part, hundreds, because we also have the National Youth Poetry Showcase, which is basically, there's lots of amazing poetry collectives, young people's poetry collectives in the country, but they don't really, for years, haven't really done anything that brings them together. So as part of the festival, we kind of expanded and set that up, which is also really lovely. That's one of my favourite bits of it, actually.
Amazing. There were a couple of years in a row where you invited me and I couldn't come, and one of the things you said was that Birmingham has got more canals than Venice. Which is incredible.
I know how to sell it. I really.
But I just want to sort of go on record that I would love to come back. So please invite me again, because it is amazing to see that level of excitement. And I think that community. What was interesting about the Royal Albert Hall gig was Lionheart sort of had pulled poets out from people he gigged alongside 10 years ago and whatever. And I think it's amazing to see people that I was performing alongside 10 years ago kind of still doing that. And it felt like, when I was starting out, both in London and then going up to the Edinburgh Fringe, there was such a community and a scene around it, and that sense of camaraderie and solidarity. So I think events like that, where you get to meet people around the country who do the same thing as you, and my experience of those kinds of events, if pitched right, is everyone was excited for each other. And I spent some time in Germany, and the German National Slam is just like the biggest party of the year. Everyone's so excited. Someone went out first round and they were genuinely delighted because they didn't have to worry about doing poems anymore. They just got to hang out. Whereas when I did go to the like US National Slam, they take it much more seriously in terms of the competition side of it. And so every team had a coach, and in between rounds they would go back to their hotel and like practice, and it would all be like 3 minutes on the dot, and it felt very clinical and very high pressure. And so there wasn't that same space to celebrate each other. Whereas I think they do also have these youth slams that are maybe more about that. And so I think it's amazing to have those spaces where you can get excited with each other and for each other and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it being a team slam is really good for that as well, because you're kind of forced, even if you're not a very like congratulatory person to other people, for you to go in the competition, they have to do well, the people on your team. So you kind of have to cheer them on and make sure they're like good. So it kind of forces them on the base level.
Yeah, amazing. You up for me doing something borrowed?
Me?
Me
Yes,
and
no,
then
you. Yes, great, yeah.
Do you want to go first? We can switch it up.
No.
No, sure.
No.
So I was panicking earlier, going through various poetry bits, trying to find something, and I came across this, and then I realised that I had already planned to do a different one, but that's now going to be my Something Blue, because I do like this poem as well. So this is simply called The Door, and it was originally by Miroslav Holub, and it's been translated from Czech by Ian Milner. Go and open the door. Maybe outside there's a tree or a wood, a garden or a magic city. Go and open the door. Maybe a dog's rummaging. Maybe you'll see a face or an eye or the picture of a picture. Go and open the door. If there's a fog, it will clear. Go and open the door. Even if there's only the darkness ticking. Even if there's only the hollow wind. Even if nothing is there. Go and open the door. At least there'll be a draft. Do you want to do something borrowed? And then we can talk about it.
So what I'm going to read is from the latest edition of Poetry Review, from the Poetry Society, which is a really good magazine if you haven't come across it before. And the poet is a Palestinian poet, and I thought, I wanted to read his work anyway, but especially after the harrowing images that have come out of Rafah this week, and I think it's really important that when we come together in these spaces or bigger spaces, or it's important to name what's happening in Palestine as the genocide is happening, and in other places around the world as well, but especially at the moment in Palestine. The poem actually was first published in 2021. It's called No Moses in Siege, and it starts with this introduction. On July 16th, 2014, 4 boys aged between 9 and 14 were killed by Israeli naval fire while playing soccer on a beach in Gaza City. No Moses in siege. Was it because there were no more graves in Gaza that you brought us to the beach to die? Was it because rubbling us in our houses, like our cousins, like our futures, like our gods, would be a bore? Was it because our cemeteries needed cemeteries, our tombstones needed homes? Was it because our fathers needed more grief? We were limbs in the wind, our joy breaking against the shore, soccer ball between our feet. We were soccer in between their feet, no place to run, no Moses in siege, waves stitched together, embroidered, weaved, unwalkable, indivisible, passage implausible. On most days we weep in advance. Here we know 2 suns, Earth's friend and white phosphorus. Here we know 2 things, death and the few breaths before it. What do you say to children for whom the Red Sea does not part? What do you say to children for whom the Red Sea does not part? That's by Mohammed Al-Kurd.
Thank you. Yeah, incredible. I think when I first started out, I would love seeing people perform, and I essentially started out sounding like a mix of my favourite poets. So I would see K Tempest or Polar Bear or Scroobius Pip and sort of be inspired and kind of almost try and emulate that. And I feel like now my favourite poetry to read is poetry that is quite different from mine, and almost feel like I don't understand the technicality and mechanism behind it, and that's sort of almost part of the magic of it. When it comes to reading poetry, is there a certain style you feel like you're drawn towards, or is it the variety of it that makes it interesting?
When I read, like, literally, my tastes have really changed over the years. Like Holly was saying, I hated poetry at school. I really didn't like it at all. I was really bored by it. Something that changed my perspective on that was a quote on a podcast. A quote by Ocean Vuong, the poet, who said, I'm paraphrasing really badly, and other people have said this in really good ways as well, but he kind of said, you know, when you experience a song or a piece of classical music or the weather, if it starts raining, you don't think, oh, what does the rain mean, or what does this line in this classical, what does this piece of music mean? You just experience it and allow it to fall on you, and accept how it makes you feel. If it makes you feel good, or if it makes you feel bad or indifferent, that's fine, but you experience the feeling of it. And I think Mary Ruefle or Mary Oliver had an interview, and she said something similar about the sea. I'm pointing at the sea for the purposes of the video. That if you go out and you look at the sea, you don't say, what does the sea mean? What does this mean? You just experience it and the feeling that it gives you. And I think the way poetry is taught in school is analytical. Like, what does this line mean? What does this and mean? And nobody writes poetry thinking that, like that I know anyway. And so I think it's much better, and actually in that sense more productive to experience poetry through feeling. And what does it make you feel? If it makes you feel anything, if it doesn't, that's fine. But that changed my experience and broadened my reading of poetry and what I enjoyed to read.
I would love it if people were forced to analyse my Schofferhöfer song as a sort of GCSE text to find the deeper meaning throughout, because I have actually thought a lot about what that means. And one of the guests that we've had on here who is absolutely incredible is the wonderful Gemma Barnett, who
yes.
I met properly at the Outspoken Poetry Awards, which I really appreciated because they had a performance poetry slot as well as a written poetry, as well as poetry and film, and sort of acknowledging that those are different art forms and can be kind of treated as such. And also, like, the Forward Prize now has a performance category, and I think that's really important to see. And you were one of the judges for that, and I wanted to ask, why didn't I win? But also, what is it like, because as part of a panel especially, what is it like, because I've just been asked to judge a poetry prize for like the first time, and I was basically really relieved that I couldn't make the dates, because then I didn't have to make the decision, because I have poetry I like and that I don't like, and I don't feel especially qualified in that, even though I've spent years living it and honing my taste, and I like things for a reason. But again, part of it is just sort of the magic of it and that kind of thing. So what is it like having a long list and being in those discussions and deciding what you feel, how do you reach a kind of common decision on that kind of thing, I guess?
Well, obviously you're my winner, always. Yeah, it's I mean, the whole concept of prizes, and I mean even magazines or whatever, where there's a panel decision or a selection process, where things where you're pitting art against art is inane, really, is because they're so different. And yeah, there is a certain level of, the basics of, are you using the punctuation, or the basics of poetry or whatever. But when you get to a certain level, like, art is art, and it's really silly to compare, especially in a prize situation, but that is the world we're living in, capitalism, etc. And that is one of the problems with Poetry Slam as well, circling back to that. But also I think one of the good things about Poetry Slam is they do it in front of an audience. Like the process of selection and, prizes or whatever is ostensibly more open. Yeah, doing it with a panel, I really enjoyed looking at all of the submissions and everything. And obviously people in the panel have different tastes, and that's why they select people. So you should do it if they select you for whatever prize, because they've asked you for a reason. And I thought that as well. I was like, are my tastes, would I be able to see everything for what it should be seen as? But especially with a panel, that's the point of it, and everyone has different tastes and whatever.
I think that with Poetry Slam, because when I started out taking part, it was almost pitched as like the anti-poetry establishment, and it's the people deciding, and it's not this kind of anonymous submission behind closed doors and with the kind of gatekeeper sort of idea. But I think, again, there's pros and cons to it, because I think in any format like that, people then learn the rules or learn what tends to get a high score, and then almost kind of gamify it and try and do a performance to win. And so then, because I always found it surprising that slam poetry was a genre, because there's nothing that it takes. It has to be a certain style. It's just 3 minutes with a judge. And again, I quite like the UK scene broadly, because it feels like there is room for heart and politics and humour, and you can kind of hold that space however you want. Whereas I think if you search slam poetry on YouTube or whatever, you will get a very specific type of poem, because that has been honed by these competitions. So I think with anything, there's always going to be a style that sort of floats to the top, I guess. But I think at least sort of acknowledging there are different types and finding ways to do that, I think, is a positive. And if it lifts someone's voice out of a crowd who you wouldn't otherwise get to hear. This is what I liked about the slams early on, was it just meant you put it on your poetry CV that you were sort of Bristol Southwest Regional Heat runner-up. Yeah, and that would kind of help you get to the next stage, sort of thing. So I do see the value in those kinds of things. But I think I'm still learning to trust my own tastes, or not feel like I have to overly justify it. Because again, when I started poetry, lots of people would say, "Oh, you must love this poet," and I just never heard of them. I felt really embarrassed by that. Whereas now, I probably just would lie and say, "Yes, I have heard of them," or would try and just be more. I think one of my New Year's resolutions was to tell someone what I do, and for it to not sound like an apology. And that's sort of a constant thing, but I'm getting better at just sort of being comfortable in doing what I do in amongst that. Can I do something blue?
Yes.
Great. So this is Borrowed and Blue. It's a double whammy. And I'm subscribed to not that many mailing lists. One of them I've talked about before is a reusable baking parchment mailing list. And I'm still on that first reusable batch. So whenever they offer me a new one, it just reminds me how good their product is. So at some point, I will invest in more. But another one that I subscribe to is Nick Cave's Red Hand Files. And he just takes questions from the public and answers them in the most kind of thoughtful way that often sort of bring me to tears. And this one came at a particularly relevant time. One of the reasons why this is the last Something Borrowed for a little while is because Grace is pregnant and having a baby in August. And I am also involved. And so, taking time off to do that right. And I've gone through various emotions around it, and I'm currently feeling really good and excited. But for a while, it was just sort of not knowing what it would be and not knowing how I was supposed to be feeling, or if my feelings were kind of valid. And then this came through, and it just sort of felt right. And so it's something blue or not blue, because we decided to sort of not tell people if it was a boy or a girl, because we don't want to get loads of specific stuff like dinosaurs and falafel. But yeah, anyway, so this was the back and forth. So I'll start with what the person sent in and then the response. My wife and I are expecting a baby boy next week. All the tests are normal, but I seem to swing from terror to euphoria and back again by the minute, mostly terror. No real question, I just wanted to let you know. Marius. Dear Marius, last Saturday morning, I walked out of the Park Hyatt in Melbourne into a dazzling sun-filled day, having been awake all night anxiously waiting by my telephone. I headed into town and bought a coffee and a sandwich from Pellegrino's, then walked past Parliament House and up by St. Patrick's Cathedral to Fitzroy Gardens, where I sat on a bench and considered your question. Of course you are oscillating between terror and euphoria, I thought, because what you and your wife are about to embark on is perhaps the most substantive course of action two people can take. To bring a baby, that fragile interwork of spirit and atoms, that squalling metaphor of conjugal love, that emissary of hope and potential, that boy of joy, into what is, by any measure, a deeply troubled world. I thought about what a defiant and outrageous act of positive intentionality it was, of courage and faith in the human adventure itself, of resistance against cynicism, of pure, undiluted trust in things, and I felt a very real affection for you both. As I drank my coffee and ate my sandwich, I thought of my son Luke and his wife Sasha, who had welcomed their own baby boy into the world last night, and I experienced a wave of great elation. A breeze rippled across the lawn, the birds cawed, the sun shone high in the sky, and the great gum trees seemed to burst from the ground, all for my own momentary enjoyment, for a new grandfather sitting on a park bench on this most happy day. A child is born and the world continues wildly upon its way. I send you and your wife all my love and admiration, Marius / Harry. Love, Nick. Before I send you wildly on your way, are you up for doing something blue?
Yes. Although I feel, God, I prepared something for this. And my mind also went to blue, like baby blue, gender reveal, gender binary, stereotype. Okay, I'm just going to read it. Okay. Lots of my friends are like settling down and having kids and getting married. But I'm the one in the group chat like, when are we going to Ibiza? And before I read this, I just want to say I have the utmost respect for anyone who is attempting to raise a child. So I love you both and everyone in the room who has children. I think that's great. It's called Everyone is Smuggling Babies. Everyone is smuggling babies into wine bars, encouraging them to list farm animals. All I wanted was a Pinot Grigio. But the waiter can't get to our table for Fireman Sam propaganda. A toddler is ordering pimento olives, asking me why I don't have a mortgage. Excuse me, this chair is melting lunchbox cheese. Please confirm your meal choices for the receptions. No presents, honestly. But here's a link to our honeymoon fund. Can I speak to the manager? I'm trying to talk about the chest x-ray I had last week, but my friend's baby says, are you done? Life is a womb-flavoured line of ketamine leading to Benidorm, says Rebecca, organising the hen. My friend's baby calls me a pathetic old twink, pulls a sharpened crayon on me. Come on now, we've all had a drink. His mum hasn't slept in 2 years. I don't know how to help. The friend who once pissed in my freshly painted wardrobe is telling his baby, behave.
Incredible, thank you. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing yourself and your poems. Can we give it up one more time for all of the open micers that we had? For Ed doing the sound. For Will for letting us have the joint. And the fantastic Toby Campion.
Let's hear it for your brilliant host, Harry Baker.
carry bacon.